Hey everyone, and welcome to my channel. I'm doing something that's very kind of throwback YouTube time. I'm filming in front of my bed, sitting on the floor with my camera on a table and some boxes. It's a bit of a trip, really, but I am into it. I think I look fine. The lighting isn't perfect, but it's fine. And I just want to film a video. I want to talk about something that I've been using for the last 10-ish days, and I have to talk about. Obviously, if I didn't stop using it, then it's kind of a good review. But regardless, let's talk about the foundation that has stolen my heart. It has ripped it out of my chest, and it's been holding it hostage ever since. This foundation is something that I would have absolutely never purchased had it not been for people like Kate the Great and Kaki and Amanda Z. These are the people that have been using this recently and have been raving about this. And I caved. I just caved. I wanted to try it, and honestly, the rave is real. The hype is real. The good reviews are legit, and I'm on board. Now, I'm gonna share my 2 cents into this because today I'm wearing this, but it looks like I'm wearing a traditional foundation that's not really as unique as this because of how I manipulated it. So obviously this is honestly the most versatile foundation I've ever tried in my whole entire life. And let me tell you all the details. Let me tell you everything. You are gonna know literally everything that I've experienced when it comes to this. So let's talk about, technical things. This is MAC. It's not as expensive as makeup goes, but it's not affordable. Well, it's not cheap. Affordability is relative, so I'm not going to talk about it being affordable or not because, listen, it really depends on your priorities. If good foundations fall into the top of your priorities list, then I would say this is worth it. But if good foundation isn't really a concern, then skip it. So, shade range. Shade range is relatively extensive. I have the shade CO, which, judging by my complexion, you would have never thought that one of the lightest shades in the range is my shade. But if I'm matching it to my neck, which is where I am most concerned about having it match, like, this is what I'm trying to say is this is where I want my foundation to match. I'm the most concerned about my neck and this area of my chest, so it matches those 2 areas perfectly. I think there are maybe over 30-40 shades, something along those lines. I didn't count, but there are many shades. And I think that they tend to be even across the board when it comes to like light tones and neutral tones and the cool tones and dark tones and warm tones and everything. They seem to be even across the board, but I think that they could definitely go darker. Now, the reason I am not very upset about them not going as dark as the darkest skin, the most beautiful chocolatey ebony skin, is because I feel like these are a bit flexible when it comes to matching your skin. And that is because of the coverage. Upon first application, when you first take it and apply it all over your face as just one thin layer, it's a skin tint. It really is. It barely covers. It gives the skin a slightly more unified look without looking like you're wearing something. It's really, really thin and very light in terms of coverage. Now, you can build it up, kind of. You're not gonna cover acne with this, and really deep scars, you're really not gonna cover that much, and very prominent discoloration. Like if your face is exceptionally red, you have rosacea maybe, or you just tend to have a red some red discolored areas, like maybe around your nose. Some people have really red cheeks. My redness tends to be around my nose and on my chin. So I feel like even with 2 layers, which is as much as I'm willing to apply on my face in terms of foundation, I can still see some of the redness peeking through, but you can go over it with a good concealer and it will work fine for that. The reason I'm not upset about it being as light coverage as it is because this is the type of product that unifies your skin decently enough that if you apply concealer and cover your face, your concealer won't look like it's this island of coverage that's on a very imperfected face, or a face that is not nearly as covered as areas with concealer, if that makes any sense. Like sometimes you have concealers that look like you have like this, is it called like a reversed panda effect? Like your eyes are much lighter than your complexion and it looks bizarre, right? Or maybe if you apply a very light toned concealer on your pimples and they're gonna shine. Basically, if you apply very heavy concealer on your pimples and nothing on the rest of your face, that concealer is gonna shine. You'll look like you're trying to cover something. But this allows for your concealer to look like it belongs on your face. Like there's nothing odd going on underneath your eyes on the areas that you have concealer on. Does that make sense? I think it does. If not, I can answer any questions in the description box underneath. All I'm saying is that if you only use concealer, a heavy coverage concealer all over your face, it'll look odd. But if you use this and then you go over the areas that you want to cover with a little bit of concealer, first of all, this will allow the concealer to look like it's something that belongs to the rest of your face. It's not like this bizarre island on certain spots. And also it'll allow you to need to use less concealer because it has perfected everything else, more or less. It looks a bit more unified. Your complexion looks healthier. Now, let's talk about finish. It says Radiance, and I will say that it is radiant, but I think it's more skin-like than radiant. To me, it's very fresh and soft, and I wouldn't say that it's dewy, but it's glowy. It looks healthy. It doesn't look flat. Sometimes with matte foundations, your face will look like a blank canvas. This allows for the it retains the dimension on your face. It doesn't camouflage it too much. So for me, sometimes when I'm using this, I feel like a little bit of highlighter on the cheekbones, a liquid highlighter, as I will tell you in a little bit, is all I really need for my complexion to look fresh and ready for the day. So the coverage, the finish is glowy but very skin-like. I don't have oily skin. I don't know if I've mentioned this, I don't think. I have very normal skin. My skin it doesn't produce a lot of oil throughout the day, and sometimes some foundations tend to make it feel a little bit tight along the jawline and a little bit on my cheeks, but overall I have normal skin. Maybe slightly dehydrated, but normal. So I don't have experience when it comes to dry patches, and I don't have experience when it comes to excess oil production. I think that if your skin isn't overly dry or overly oily, that this foundation is going to work. I really don't think that this foundation is absolutely not suitable for certain skin types. As long as it's not extremely the most oily skin, or like your whole entire face is dried out and maybe like there's a bit of peeling going through or something. Let's talk about, we talked about coverage as well. Buildability, right? First coverage, first layer, very sheer. Extremely sheer. It looks like you have maybe something, maybe it looks like you almost have a layer of sunscreen, and it's barely, if anything, it's barely tinted, right? A second layer will cover a little bit more, but you will still see spots like blemishes. You'll still see really dark or really different discolored areas. I really like a little bit of coverage because all I really want to do at the end of the day is just perfect those spots that I'm not very happy with, and make sure that the concealer looks like it's native to my skin. Like it's not this odd spot of perfection in a sea of weird, discolored and whatnot areas. So now, let's talk about application. I have not used a sponge because this foundation is literally liquid. Can you hear this? It's watery. This foundation is as runny as juice and water. It's really, really, really runny. So using a sponge with something like this, it's basically going to absorb all the foundation and you're not going to be left with anything. So I don't really think it's a smart idea to use a sponge when you're using this. I did apply it twice with my fingers. I liked it. I don't really love blending with my hands. I think that it's just that my hands get dirty. It's not that that it ends up looking blotchy or it ends up looking uneven or anything. It does look good, it does look even, and it really behaves well with this method of application. But at the end of the day, do you want dirty fingers? I do not. So, I mean, to each their own. I used the Real Techniques Expert Face Brush for the other 2 or 3 times of use. And it worked like magic. Honestly, wow. First of all, I think that with this brush specifically, I don't know if it's in my head, but the coverage tends to be a little bit better. There's something about this brush that makes this foundation a little bit more, it's still not gonna cover anything really, I don't want to say bad, because discoloration isn't really bad and pimples are normal, but it's gonna cover anything that's obviously not your even skin tone. Does that make sense? I hope. So with a brush, I feel like you get more coverage and it looks flawless. Honestly, this is the foundation that I have on my face today. Look. And I used the brush to apply it and I just really like it. What I did today was just one layer, and then I went with literally one dot. Like I squeezed it, the tiniest squeeze, and one little drop fell, and then I took it and I applied it right between my brows and right underneath my lips, like basically my chin. Those are the areas that I felt like I needed a very light amount of coverage, but I didn't want to go over them with concealer. Then I took my concealer. It's a new concealer that I've been trying recently and I love it. Watch my, I don't know if it's gonna come after this or before this video, and you'll see me use it in person. It seems to be like the most perfect concealer I've tried in my whole entire life, but that will remain to be determined maybe after a week or so of use. So I applied it with my brush. I used this drop right here, and I went over some blemishes with concealer and obviously my under eyes and a little bit around my nose, and I just really like it so much. Now this is honestly the most flexible foundation I've used for the fact that I've had a different look each time I used it. So the first time that I applied it on my bare face, and then I went with the Hollywood Flawless filter from Charlotte Tilbury and I applied it heavily on my cheeks and a little bit on my temples, and my skin looked wet. It looked dewy. It looked really kind of... it's the most highlighted effect I've ever gotten with anything. Do you see that on my face today? I think not. And I didn't set it with anything. I should also say that. The second time I applied it, I applied it with the brush, and then I took my powder. I used the Charlotte Tilbury Flawless Finish powder, and I applied the powder only on my T-zone and a little bit on my smile lines, and that was it. And on my cheeks I applied my Salt New York palette. I have the highlighter and the bronzer, the contour, and a blush, or like a cheek tint, whatever it's actually called. And my face looked glowy, but the most amount of glow was on my cheeks because of the blush, and because I didn't set the foundation in any way, shape or form on my cheeks. I really didn't. I only set it on my T-zone, and that was that. And then I kept playing with it, playing with different powders and things like that, and it worked beautifully with every powder I've used. I used a Maybelline powder, like a pressed Fit Me powder. I used the Pupa powder that I have. I used some loose powders, some pressed powders, and it really looked beautiful. And the finish was definitely more matte because of the powder, but it still looked fresh. And today I applied it and I went over my entire face, and I really set my face with powder. So my face looks more, I mean, like, it doesn't look matte, right? Obviously I have some highlighter right here, but it really doesn't look matte. But it doesn't look glowy and dewy either. It looks like a satin type of finish, like my skin is perfected, and I look like I have makeup on because I have a lot of cheek products and I have a lot of eye products. You're gonna look at me and you're gonna know that I have makeup on. Not because the foundation looks too perfect, but because the rest of my makeup looks really done. I look like I have this contour, my nose is contoured and everything is chiseled, and I have highlighter and blush, and my eyes are smoky and warm toned. I feel like I'm back in 2014, 15, something like that. And you're gonna know that there's foundation on this bee's face. My camera cut me off because I kept talking and it can only film for 20 minutes. Who knew? Well, I do know, but I lost track of time. Anyway, I was saying that the foundation doesn't make my face look done up. What does, oh come on, how rude. What does is the rest of my makeup. So this adjusts itself to the way of application that you're doing. If you apply the Hollywood Flawless filter underneath, or you mix something glowy with it, it's going to look really glowy. But then if you apply it over, like in regular primer, nothing that accentuates glow, and then you go ahead and you powder it, it's going to look more mattified but very skin-like at the same time. It's not gonna, I mean, like, listen, maybe it's my powders, but regardless to the powders that I've used, it has never looked powdery, too dry, cakey. Those three things have never appeared on this face as a result of using this with any other powder that I have in my entire collection. So honestly, like, I'm really, really excited about this. Let's talk about packaging. This doesn't come with a pump. It comes with like this nozzle right here. It's called that. Maybe I'm mistaken with the terminology, but basically you have to squeeze it out. And there is a little bit of a learning curve, because if you squeeze out, if you squeeze too hard, because this is liquidy, you're gonna have an explosion of foundation. It hasn't happened to me because I was at the store and I saw the formula and things like that, but be warned, be careful, beware. This foundation bottle doesn't need a heavy amount of push or like a lot of squeezing. The bottle is definitely like sturdy. It's not like this flimsy bottle or anything like that, and it's actually all entirely plastic. I mean, which is not the best, but if it's supposed to be squeezed, it can't be glass, right? So yeah, I mean, like, let's summarize. Overall, if I could only keep one foundation, I would definitely be a little bit upset about not having two. Not having the Dough, which I don't have at the moment, but I must have it. And not having the Catrice HD fluid foundation, liquid foundation, whatever foundation that is. But this kind of can emulate the effect of the Catrice if I set it with powders, and I'm happy with it, but I need to build it in order to get the coverage that the Catrice one can give me. But then the Catrice one is maybe too perfecting for day to day. I think I would keep this as the only foundation because of the versatility and because of the ease of taking this traveling with you. This is the type of bottle that you can just like close really shut and it's not gonna leak because the lid is really tight, and because it's glass, you know that it's not gonna break. It's very travel friendly in that way. Because it's not glass, it's not gonna break because it's plastic. What else have I not mentioned? If I were to rate it, let's talk about the most basic things. Packaging, I'd give it maybe like a 4 because it's very functional, but it's not attractive in any way. We haven't addressed wear time yet. Now, finally, let's talk about wear time. Honestly, this and the Catrice one, and if I'm not mistaken, also the Dough, are the only foundations where I feel like my smile lines and my expression lines right here aren't going to look bad by the end of the day. Really, it barely, this one almost completely doesn't settle in my smile lines and my expression lines. Just a little bit if I'm looking at myself like at a very, very close distance, which no one does. If I'm looking at myself like this in the mirror, then I'll see things. But if I'm looking at myself in normal distance, I will tell you that my face looks perfect. It really does. I've worn it out, I've worn it in the midst of the most hottest days of spring in the Mediterranean weather, with a little bit of humidity and everything, and it wore beautifully for the entire day. That also is relevant to your skin type, and my skin type is really not the type to destroy foundations throughout the days, but that's saying a lot because of how long lasting it is. Honestly, like, wow, I'm wowed by the longevity. I've worn it for over 10 hours once and it looked stunning. I've worn it for approximately 6 hours during the other times and it still wore beautifully. And today this is only like what, the second hour of wear, and it still looks phenomenal. Like, to be completely honest, perfection. If we look at what this foundation promises, it promises a luminous finish, it promises a transparent foundation. Where does it say here? Radiant sheer foundation. So the promises are delivered. Nothing wrong with that. I would definitely buy this again. And what else? I would buy it again, and I would highly recommend it. I would. So, we've made it to the end of the video. This is my review of the MAC Studio of Radiance Face and Body Radiant Sheer Foundation, and I would end it by saying that it's highly recommended. Any review you watch of this that's positive, I support. The only thing is, I just wish that there were some darker shades. But because the coverage is very little, I think that people can get away with more shades than focusing on this one specific perfected shade, because it's so full coverage that it looks like a mask if it's not the exact shade of your complexion. Does that make sense? I hope it does. But thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Do not forget to subscribe, and if you want to know the concealer that's stolen my heart as well, watch the Get Ready With Me, the makeup tutorial. I don't know what I'm gonna call it. I think maybe I'm gonna call it like therapeutic makeup while jamming to some music. Something like that, because all I was doing was listening to Amy Winehouse, I was listening to Duffy. I mean, like, the throwback of this session was absurd, unreal. I was even listening to a little bit of, what's his name? The guy who sings, Billy's leaving today. Oh, no, what's the name? Tomorrow comes, sorrow becomes his soulmate. The passion is done, the prodigal son is too late. I mean, I'm terrible with some lyrics, but, and my voice is obviously like opera ready. Anyway, yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.